Okay, Mona. So you have a multiplicity of titles. What would you like me to title you as?
The way that I see myself mostly is as an artist, and everything that I do kind of comes from that.
Okay. And now take me back to growing up in Flint. Where did you go to grade school, middle school, high school? I know that you went to U of M Flint, but take me through your journey through your younger years up until U of M Flint.
Yeah, I started out at Randall's Elementary, and then I went to a private Islamic school called Genesee Academy, which was, I think, founded in 1995. So I only went to Flint Public School until second grade, and then I started at the Islamic school. The Islamic school ran until eighth grade. So then I went to Carmen Ainsworth High School, ninth grade to 12th grade, and then I went to U of M Flint.
So I grew up behind Carmen Ainsworth High School off of was it Bristol Road? Calkins Road. Calkins Road.
Yeah.
So where did you live?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I lived actually right off of Calkins.
Okay.
Um, I lived right down Calkins, right near Carmen Ainsworth.
Okay. Great.
Yeah.
And so how did you get into music?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big story in my life. I grew up only listening to Islamic music, that was only percussion based, because other forms of music are considered forbidden by some contingents of the community. So I didn't grow up with a lot of pop or rap or anything. And then as I turned about 12, 13, you start learning that you can sneak your own way in here and there. So I would go down to the basement and I would turn on the radio, and I would start recording my own cassettes. This is around like 97, 98. I remember we traveled overseas, and I could cross the street from my grandmother's house in Damascus and go into a shop that sold, kind of bootleg tapes. And
Oops,
and
I'm
so
sorry.
I would buy one of the first, sorry?
You broke up there, but now.
Oh, okay. I can move to a better part of the house if it's not sounding good.
No, this is good. This is good.
Okay.
So if this freezes or we get kicked off of Wi-Fi, let's just come back to this Zoom address and we'll just keep on moving.
Sounds good. And I was actually in Syria one summer with my grandmother, and my older sister was with me, and she had brought with her a bunch of CDs. And one of the CDs she brought with her, she was much older, and she had like lived in New York, and she had already, had kind of an adult life. And she brought with her Most Def's Black on Both Sides. And that was the first time that I really like listened to a full album of hip hop. And I grew up with the sounds of hip hop in the background in Flint. It was kind of the peripheral sound of people driving by, cars in the stores, in the streets. That's what you heard, but it wasn't in my household. This was the first time that I experienced the full album, and Mos Def starts that album out with Bismillah Rahman Rahim, which is the blessing to begin something in our tradition. And so it just really called to me. I felt it deeply as a Muslim, as somebody who already expressed myself as a poet at that age. I'd been writing poetry. So at around, I feel like I got home that summer, and that was when I really jumped into the Flint poetry scene. That was when I started like co-writing with other Flint artists. That's when I started going to the open mics. That was also when I started public high school, so I was open to a lot more influences than just the Muslim immigrant community. So it was a real expansive time for me at that time. I started going downtown to the open mics and just seeing what I could do. The first time I got up to the mic, uh, it was actually in the Kiva at U of M Flint. Um, I'd been practicing for months. This was like a showcase that people were paying to come to. That Ed, he used to be called Future. I think his name is Ed Wilson. I can look up his real name. I just knew him as Future. He people used to pay to come to these shows, and I got up to the mic and nothing came out of my mouth. I had such intense stage fright, and I'd been practicing for months. So that was sort of my introduction to Flint and the Flint scene and poetry, and that's sort of where I started out.
So a couple of follow-up questions to that was, how old were you? Do you remember which year you were when you first went to the Kiva?
Yeah, I think I was 15 the first time I went. I was either 14 or 15 because I had already started at Carmen Ainsworth High School. I used to drive even all the way down to Ann Arbor and Detroit with friends, and we used to go to all the different open mics depending on our favorite poets who were performing at the slams, depending on where they were. I started entering the slams when I was about 15, 16, once I started to get a little bit better. Um, I just had notebooks and notebooks full of poetry, and I just had never shared it before. And one of my dear friends, actually, she was the impetus for me going into the slams and to see what I could do. And she also wrote poetry, but hers was not the performance type. So she just wanted at least one of us to do it. So
So your sister introduced you to the sounds of most stuff. I know that you come from a family of 7 children.
8, I'm the
8.
7th.
You're the 7th. Okay. So there's how many boys? How many girls? And what's
We're
the
4 and 4.
4 and 4? Okay.
We're 4 and 4. The oldest was born in 1972, and the youngest was born in 1990. We were born, the oldest was born in Chicago in 1972, and the youngest was actually born in Saudi Arabia in 1990. So we have a slew of stories and, identities in terms of where we were born and the backstories. It's a story of diaspora for sure.
So your family moved to Flint which year?
I believe it was 19. Whew, you got me on this one because we started out in Chicago in 1971. The parents moved there as newlyweds. Then they went to Detroit. Um, Very shortly thereafter, in terms of exact years, I'll send you an email with exact years because I wasn't around, so I don't exactly know. And then it, it was in the 80s. Um, Probably early 80s.
And would you know what brought them to Flint?
Yeah, my parents were connected to another immigrant family. They were half Palestinian, half Syrian. They were the only other Muslims in Flint at the time, and my parents were close with them. And my father heard from this friend about a job opportunity in Flint. So my dad came to Flint to work.
And is your family still there?
Yeah, my father actually just passed away this past March, but my mom is still there. I have a brother who's currently there, but the rest of the family has sort of, I have a brother in Canton and a brother in Ann Arbor, so people have spread out a little bit. But my sister is actually in Flint, my oldest sister, and she's a nurse in Flint.
Okay, Hurley McLaren.
She just finished nursing school at U of M Flint, so she's actually at Genesis.
Nice, nice. That's where my sister worked and where my mom worked for a really long time. So,
Oh,
so can you tell me about one of the questions that I have for each of the rap artists who I'm talking to is who are their top 10 favorite rappers from Flint? Who are your top 10, or if you could share like your few favorites or the ones who influenced you most?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come up in the like hip hop rap scene until, I mean, I only started doing music a few years ago in 2016, really. So I wasn't even in Flint. So I couldn't tell you my favorite Flint artist, except for John Connor. I really like John Connor. I like his style. I like his flow. I like, you know, the kind of things he talks about in his music. He's just a dope artist in general. There's a lot of new Flint artists. I try to stay current a little bit, but a lot of it is not my style, because it's, how would you say it? You know, it's about the very sort of like classic misogynistic, like, you know, a lot of it is about guns and gun violence and, you know, who's strapped and who's not, and, you know, about passing Molly to strippers and stuff like that. Um, I understand that that's some people's life, but that's just not, I try to surround myself with uh, positive, uh, especially positive images of women specifically. So when I see that kind of stuff, it just turns me off a little bit. So I don't feel connected to a lot of it, but you know, I do really like John Connor. There's another artist, I'm forgetting her name. Um, you know, of course, it's a classic MC Bree, but like there's what is her name? Queen.
Lyric the Queen.
Yeah, Lyric the Queen. Okay, yeah. So Lyric the Queen is cool. I like some of her stuff. I like, she's gritty, she's cool. Her flow is really really interesting. She stays on top of it. It's really beautifully produced too. I love Tunde Olaniran also. Tunde is who produced my first 2 or 3 songs. So Tunde is an amazing artist. I don't think Tunde considers himself a rapper. I think he considers himself more pop. But you know, when he does rap, it's fire. So
I interviewed John Connor last week, and I've also interviewed Lyric the Queen. In fact, I was trying to get an interview with you, and I was working on my documentary film about MC Breed and Bootleg, who is Ira Dorsey of the Dayton Family. But now is, you know, a different day. Uh, yeah, you know what, John is so gracious. Both of them. So Lyric is so gracious, so wonderful. But you've mentioned a couple of times, and this is the core of my book, which is flow. What do you mean by flow?
to me, flow is the way that you ride the beat, the way that you are in your pockets, the way that you are, you know, vibing with the rhythm and staying on top of it or not. You know, there's a modern movement that isn't really interested in like being in the pocket, and that, like, I understand that sort of deconstructionist mentality. You know, we can be analytical about it, but I just really like the feeling of when somebody is just riding a beat so smooth. You know, I think of like people who do it really interesting are like Andre 3000, or, you know, J. Cole is somebody who like stays on top of the beat in such a smooth way. Sometimes like they even become integrated in your mind. You know, you can't hear his flow without the music. You can't hear the music without his flow. So, you know, flow is just this beautiful sort of merging of rhythm and like of lyricism and music, and the way that they come together and merge together. Um, you know, I learned flow without music. I learned how to write, you know, without rhythm. So for me, that was a learning curve actually. So because I wrote poetry, I didn't have any pockets to like sink into. It was all just about feeling. And then when I got into music, it was something that I had to learn. It was something that was actually challenging for me, especially not growing up with that as like a base. So learning how to be in a pocket, that was a challenge, but I can honestly say that it's something that I've really worked on and grown into.
Could you use one of your songs as an example of flow, how you got into it or how you like it?
Yeah, I mean, my song Lifted, I I wrote that song 100% on my own, which that was the first song that I had done that with. Um, and that was the first song where I really felt like I could merge my identity as a spoken word artist, as a spoken word, and as a rapper. And it was the first time that I felt like I could actually like really speak my mind without a filter, without it was a flow. It was truly a flow because I wasn't censoring myself, you know, where I go living in that new earth, dying just to give birth to a world free from hurt, been to hell's rotten rock bottom, hell is postpartum, now like Moses partum, like Obama pardon, getting enough, you know, like so so the flow was it was exactly what came to me in the moment. There was no editing. And that was the first time that of like lots of editing because I was going for a more pop sound. I was going for a more intricate rhythm. And this was just like a smooth flow over the beat that was almost like a freestyle.
So now you're giving me a really good segue into the other kind of flow that I'm trying to get into, which is mental flow or being in the zone. So with that song, how do you explain getting into the zone?
Yeah, it's uh, it's a really beautiful thing to be in the zone when the words are just coming, and you're not having to link a song yesterday and I was writing a different song the day before. And sometimes a song will just come out all at once, and I would consider that to be sort of like a like such a gift. Um, you know, somebody who uh, Kevin Gates is somebody who like writes and like he'll just bang out a song, two songs, three songs in one day. You know, he's somebody who I like. Lil Wayne is somebody who can just like get in the booth. Like he never writes stuff down. He just gets in the booth and just like flows, just lets the words come. And I feel like that is something that I'm striving for. I still have a lot of nerves. I still have a lot of like where I psych myself out. And I'm like constantly editing in my mind. But when I allow that mental flow state to come over me and I just let myself be free, I feel like that's when the dopest stuff emerges. And it's really a liberation. It feels like an organic sort of emergence of self, you know, where everything that you are and everything that you believe just sort of organically and naturally spills out of you. And it happens to be rhythmic, it happens to be, you know, in the pocket, it happens to be in the rhyme.
So have you noticed like the environmental conditions that lend itself to being in such a creative um, mode?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it takes space and time. You know, I have two little kids, so I don't always get the opportunity to like get 2 hours, 3 hours to just like sit and write. Um, but it really depends. You know, sometimes I'll just like be in the car and a verse will come to me and I'll just like have to get it out, or I'll be in the shower and it'll just have to come out. And then other times it'll be one or two lines. that I'll write down and I'll have to come back to later. But usually, and I would say most traditionally, I have to like sit down and like chill and let myself sort of write all the garbage, and then something will emerge that's really great, after 10, 15, 20, 30, an hour of garbage. And then something great happens where I'm like, okay, this is all really garbage, and then I have to sort of let it go, and then something beautiful will come and something beautiful will emerge.
Take me back to it's another follow-up question. Take me back to that time you were in the Kiva, where you had stage fright that very first time. How did you move forward? How did you overcome that?
Um, I mean, being in Flint was such a gift. People were so warm. I'm thinking of like Avery, who was also a poet at the time. I'm thinking of Io. I'm thinking of Natasha Jackson. I'm thinking of all of these people in the Flint poetry scene who were just so encouraging and loving. Um, and then when I went to U of M Flint, I had this amazing professor, Dr. Tracy Curry, who taught a spoken word class. And she actually is really the one who got me, she just got me out of my head. She was such an amazing professor, and she was just really able to help me to fine tune and discipline myself so that I could write in a way that was more polished, and not just like the musings of an undisciplined mind are not that interesting. It's when you pull together um, the best parts of yourself, the struggling parts of yourself, and you can say it in a way that can connect to others, and others in their struggle or others in their joy. And that's the piece that she really helped me do. And it was through discipline. It was through understanding that not everything I wrote was going to be good, and not everything I wrote was going to be genius. I feel like young artists just feel like everything they write is just so good, you can't throw anything away. And you get a little bit older, you get a little more distance, and you're like, oh yeah, that's some trash. Like, um, that it takes fine tuning, it takes refining, it takes beautifying, and then you can get to something really great. And she really taught me that. When I was in, I think I was either a freshman or a sophomore in college, 19 years old, and I met her. I mean, that's when really things shifted for me as an artist, and I was no longer thinking about myself. It was at that point actually that I couldn't think about doing anything else with my life. She really allowed me to see that as my identity, where I had never allowed myself that before. I that was the first time I really saw myself as an artist, and I didn't have to be anything else. That didn't have to be my hobby. You know what I mean? It could be the primary um, source of my income. It could be the primary source of my life. And I did make a living as a performance poet for a really long time, before I went to graduate school and did my other stuff.
So your music making process, it sounds, and please let me know if this is incorrect. So you write first, and then at what point do you think about the flow and the beats?
So I don't know is actually right first. For my EP, I went out to LA to work with these producers, JB and Karan Cole, and that was the first time I worked on a full project. Before that, it had only been like, I had started with a beat, and then I had written to that beat. This was the first time that I was like, I have this idea for a beat, and then this is the song that I would think that would go with this beat. And I would send the beat idea, I would send the kind of things I was hearing in my mind, to the producers, and they would say, okay, we'll shoot you something back soon. And then they would, and I would be like, well, it needs a little more bass, it needs a little, it needs a bigger drop, it needs this, it needs that. And we would sort of work on that together. And then when the beat was perfect, that was when I would start writing. But I already kind of knew what the song was going to be about, because I had already laid out some kind of basic thoughts without like a full verse or something, you know. So I kind of already knew the theme of the song. So for instance, the song Barbarian, I already knew I wanted the song to be this like decolonial anthem. I already knew that it was going to be about decolonization of beauty standards. I already knew what it was going to be. And I just needed a beat that was going to get that song out of me. So I sent the thoughts that were going through my mind to the producers, and I said I want it to have some horns, I want it to possibly have a bagpipe, I want it to possibly, you know, I want it to be really fun, I want it to have an anthem like feeling. And we went back and forth and until we got this like beat that I love. And then I flew out to LA and we wrote the song, and I actually co-wrote it with Tune.
So at what point did you say to yourself, I'm going to be a rap artist? I'm going to move into music from my poetry.
Yeah, I mean, it was something I always thought about, but there were a lot of cultural issues with it. I just never imagined that I would overcome those in my own heart, in my own life, to be able to allow myself to do it. But in 2015 and 2016, my husband and I did this project called Ask a Muslim, and that project kind of really pushed me to I have these like little moments in my life that sort of always push me and project me into being a bigger version of myself. So and you know, in 2000, when I was 24 years old, however long ago that was, I think it was 2012, one of my really dear friends passed away, and that pushed me to leave Flint. Actually, it pushed me to stop being so afraid of the world, that, you know, I had never lived anywhere outside of Flint. I had never really stayed anywhere outside of Flint and or city. Those were like my two comfort places, and it pushed me. And then after Paris attacks in San Bernardino, you know, I felt like, okay, this is another growing edge. This is another point in time where I have to push myself and challenge myself to be bigger if I possibly can, and to do more things to promote love in the world, and to do a better job of speaking my truth and sharing anything that can help people feel a little better. And that was when we did the Ask a Muslim project. And then after that, that was actually when I was applying to graduate school, to become a chaplain. And that was when I was like, you know what, this world really sucks. Trump was running for president, and I was like, if this dude can be president, I can be a rapper. You know, like, what's holding me back? If this buffoon has no limits, why am I out here limiting myself? And like, what's actually holding me back from something that I love? Hip hop is a love. And what is holding me back from sharing this part of myself with the world? It's just fear of judgment, from my own immigrant community that's gonna say, I mean, and that has happened, that's gonna like vocal to a feminist, to whatever, that it's not a part of our tradition, and you know, she's too out there, and she's doing too much, and she's showing too much of her body, and she's showing the world too much of herself, and it's immodest, and it's whatever, you know, and hip hop is misogynistic, so how could you be a part of a culture that's so blah blah blah, you know, all of this stuff. I knew it was gonna come, but I was just like, you know what, it's worth it. The potential benefit, for me sharing stories that I know can help people, which I feel like hip hop is a mode of sharing powerful stories that uplift and help and heal. I felt like the benefit outweighed the harm. So I wanted to push myself to do it.
And so, Mona, I'm so grateful for this time. I know that we're over the half-hour mark, but my last question is, so what are you working on now?
I am hopefully working towards a full-length album. I want to, again, push myself to do something that's a little longer form. I've only done an EP and I've done singles. And I thought I had been waiting for a connection with a producer that I was going to do a full-length album with, and or I was waiting for a record label or something. And I've gotten offers, but it's always been a little too controlling. It's never been the kind of thing where I just had freedom to sort of say, they just want me to replicate what I've already done, which I'm not that interested in. I'm interested in continuing to push myself and tell bigger stories and tell, harder stories, to tell more vulnerable stories, instead of just like continuing to do what I've already done. So I'm trying to push myself to be a little more vulnerable, tell stories that are a little more personal, maybe not as political, in terms of like, a construction of social and political identity, but actually more of a internal, vulnerable conversation of just like what's happening inside of my own mind and heart.
Yeah, and so are you planning any projects aside from maybe from your album? Are you planning to do anything political this year, given it's an election year?
Always. Always. I mean, that's always at the forefront of what I'm thinking about. I have a song that's going to be coming out soon, hopefully, if I can. Coronavirus has just kind of like messed everything up, and hurt so many people that it's hard to just like continue moving on the projects. But I do have a song, um, so we'll see.
All right, I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, and thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to be in touch because I'm sure I'm going to have other questions for you if that's okay.
Yeah, good luck and blessings on your project. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's great. It's like you. It's one of those gifts. So
Mm.
thank
Well, you
you.
have to talk to John Connor, so I'm jealous.
You should work with him.
I should. I've actually never met him, but I have a lot of friends in common, so I should reach out at some point.
Oh my gosh, he would love to work with you. That's my feeling. So I think you should connect. But yeah, blessings to you, and thank you for repping Flint and everything that you do, Mona.
Thank you so much. Yeah, blessings on the project. Be well. Take care.